When was the best time you thought? I clearly underestimated this person. My grandmother was sort of my idol. At 80, she still had her license, wasn't your typical old lady, and was pretty damn tough. Had lived through breast cancer twice, double mastectomy, and choosing divorce and single motherhood in an era when you didn't do that. We were in the grocery store together when I was about 10, so that would have been mid-90s. There were 3 other people in line ahead of us, a very obvious gay couple of guys, and a big, tough, bodybuilder type, and then us. And the bodybuilder guy is just spewing all the hatred he can. Gay guys are totally trying to ignore him, which is just firing him up more. Finally, my grandmother, a very tolerant woman, taps the bodybuilder on the shoulder and says, "They aren't hurting you, leave them be," to which he answers, "What they are doing is disgusting and they shouldn't be around normal people." My grandmother stares him dead in the eye, deadpan expression, and says, "Sir, I know you don't agree with me or them, but a good ass fucking might lighten you up." You could have heard a pin drop. The cashier froze, I froze, the bodybuilder froze, the gay guys froze. My grandmother just held eye contact. After about 10 seconds, he dropped his eyes, and everybody there realized they were seeing a sort of crushing of his soul. He quietly stepped out of line. My grandmother never said another word about it, except when we got to the car, she looked over at me and said, "Being a grown-up bully is a sad thing to be." The guy could have squashed her like a fly. I was never able to look at her the same anymore. She was an even more mystical type of figure after that. Mullet man. I met this guy, a construction worker. He was gruff, older, and rocked a long mullet. The party in the back was thick, and went all the way down his back. I thought he was just a crusty, kinda white trash dude, and started calling him Mullet Man, in my head and to my coworkers. We worked for a competing firm, and saw him at industry events. Fast forward a few months, and I overhear him telling someone how his niece has cancer, and he's growing his hair out for her to have a new wig made. He heard that untreated hair works best, so he figured his would be ideal. I've never felt like such a dick. You go, Mullet Man, you beautiful human. I was roughly about 8 or 9. So me, my ma'am, 2 brothers and a friend all went to the cinema. We ended up getting out of the cinema at like 10. As we were walking back to the car, I kind of dropped back a little bit as I was in my own world. All I heard from behind me was a teen's voice getting my attention, unaware of any real dangers in life at such a tender age, and my ma'am a few meters up from me. I turned around. Soon as I turned around, one of the kids knees me in the stomach, and the other one punched me in the face. The worst bit was I couldn't even shout as I was winded. A few seconds passed and I shouted. My ma'am turned, seen me on the floor, and started sprinting for these kids. She ran straight past me. I can imagine she was probably thinking, "Fuck him, they are going to be eating through a straw." So right in front of me, my ma'am grabbed one of them and started punching this 16-year-old in the face and throwing him around like a rag doll. The other one was shouting for her to stop, and he ran up to my ma'am and she literally did the same to him. But I could see blood all over this one's jacket. She had ripped part of his ear. Security came over not so long after, and then the police. The kids were arrested, and nothing came of my ma'am kicking 7 shades of shit out of these 2 kids. Turns out they had been going around the Metro Center, where the cinema was, shoplifting and pickpocketing. Safe to say everybody in school knew the next day. I imagine it was a good bully deterrent too. I met a guy while going through college. He was in my major and most of my classes. He was a massive stoner with no fucking brains about him. He failed almost every class due to not trying or slacking off, and was always in an insane panic the last 2 weeks of classes to not fail. He ended up repeating classes a lot. At some point, I decided to switch colleges. I graduate this December. I got a LinkedIn request from him yesterday. He has finished his master's in engineer technology now and has asked loads of recommendations on his profile from employers that he did internships under, all giving him glowing reviews about his work ethic. I left this guy in the dust 3 years ago. Sometime between then and now, he cleaned up his act and worked so hard that not only did he close the year gap in courses between me and him due to all his failings, but he also accelerated ahead 2 additional years and finished a master's. How the fuck did you do that, Fred? I watched you come to class high for a year, and then you crammed 4 years of work into 2. Told a guy who I had previously turned down for a date that if he wanted to woo me, I was okay with that. We had talked about wanting to get to know one another better as friends. He said he would have a hard time not flirting with me while doing so. At some point in our exchange, I mentioned I have a weakness for love letters. He proceeded to write me a series of the most amazing, letters, which slowly turned into love letters I have ever received. Realized I was falling in love with him about a month later. Still together. My kid. So he was born with some limb differences, missing bones, clubbed hands, 3 fingers instead of 4 because 1 finger had to be made into thumbs. Was looking forward to having a boy who was into sports, but figured that just wasn't gonna happen. Didn't think he could hold a baseball bat or throw a ball straight, etc. Figured soccer or running, if anything, would be his thing. When he was 2, he was really into hockey. I figured, he's 2. It will pass. Nope. Little shit learned to skate in diapers, but had a hard time holding the stick. Wrote to a bunch of hockey glove manufacturers, and Reebok had just bought CCM, or the other way around, and they made him custom gloves. They didn't work, but it was still really freaking cool they did that. Kiddo got the first pair of RBK gloves in the world. Anyway, so he turns 4 and wants to play t-ball and soccer, and gets older and tries lacrosse, all the while playing hockey. I figure he'll give up because he won't be very good at those things, but he is. He is actually decent at soccer, baseball, lacrosse, basketball, golf, you name it. Not a star, clearly, but good enough to contribute to the team. So he turns 8, and his older buddy from the neighborhood is a hockey phenom. Gets invited to be on all these AAA summer teams, so my kid wants to do that. Well, he can contribute to the team, but he's nothing like this kid. I let him try out for a new team in the area, but they don't get enough kids for his birth year. He tries again next year, same deal. They take a couple kids from his birth year and put them with the next older group, but not him. So the 3rd year he makes the team, and improves immensely. But this team isn't that great, being a new team and all. So he decides he's going to play in the NHL, and to do that he has to play DIVI hockey, and to do that, he wants to get a scholarship to a prep school near here. And to do that he needs to make a higher-level AAA summer team. Kid has it all planned out. So I tell him, look, crazy talent like Crosby or Gretzky doesn't come along all that often, so teams still have to fill their rosters, but there's a lot of competition, and if you want to make it to that level, you have to put in the work to get there. This team he wants to make is ridiculous money, even in hockey terms, and I tell him if he wants to play summer hockey for fun, that's no problem. But if he wants to play on the expensive one, I am going to need to see him working hard. No asking to skip practice, etc. I'm willing to pay if he's willing to put in the work. I said nothing else. He's 11 at this time. Wouldn't you know the little shit put in the work and made that team? So now he's 12, and he's got scouts coming to games and invitations to play in tournaments, and special camps are coming in. He's been schmoozing the nearest juniors coach, and one night he raced a bunch of the players on the team, ages 17 to 20, and kicked 2 of their asses, one of them being 6 feet 5 inches tall to my kiddo's 5 feet 4 inches. Coach tracked me down and told me he was saving a spot for my kid on his team. He's gotten himself TV interviews, articles in the newspaper, and spots on teams by being charming, good-looking, polite, and by being a hockey player who works hard and is coachable and puts the team's needs before his own, and sometimes over players who are a tad better skill-wise than he is. So yeah, I totally underestimated my own kid. The little woman who was my first partner in Taekwondo. I was a much taller white belt, and she was a green belt. That was the day I watched the gymnasium ceiling pass overhead, in a slow, dreamy way, followed by the sound of my landing. I worked at an electronics retailer 2 years ago. One day, a middle-aged farmer, and I mean farmer, complete with overalls, boots and straight-billed cap, came into the store looking for a cell phone. I immediately sold him the simplest, easiest phone we carried, going into great detail on every feature, including the camera, sending text messages and every imaginable part of the phone's hardware and software. The next day, the same guy comes in and I immediately think that he's having phone trouble and resign myself to an hour of explanation. He asks for an external hard drive, because he wants to move his custom kernel of Linux to his new computer. I can't remember the exact details. I was totally floored by his request. He then spots my textbook on international political economy. My boss was very forgiving of me studying in slow times, and asks me 15 minutes of in-depth questions on one of the main contemporary theorists in the field, Karl Polanyi. Beyond even what myself and my classmates had asked, the class was graduate level. Needless to say, I was berating myself for ever stereotyping this seemingly backwoods farmer from the 60s. A group of family friends and I went paintballing for the first time, which ended up having a bunch of the kids against the parents. Being young and cocky, we thought it would be a stomp, and marched confidently into the woods. What we forgot was that all of our parents were immigrants from Taiwan. Taiwan has mandatory military service. I was reminded of that fact rather harshly when I tried to ambush my dad. The paintball in my face pinned this fact to my memory forever. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.